Hello and welcome back. This is another fourth and fifth grade division video. And again, we're going to be focusing on dividing by two-digit numbers, but this is going to be the second part of that. So for the last video I did where we worked on this concept, we worked mostly with two and three-digit numbers and dividing those by two-digit numbers. For this one, we're going to work mostly with four-digit numbers or some larger numbers and dividing those by two-digit numbers today. Okay, here is our first example that we're going to do today. We're going to take the number 9,012 and divide it by 12. So let's start with, we're going to do mostly the standard algorithm with these, divide, multiply, subtract, and bring down. So I'm going to start by putting that first number, that 9,012, inside the division bracket and putting 12 on the outside. So divide, multiply, subtract, and bring down are the four steps that we follow for the standard algorithm. I'm going to start with divide. I want to see how many times 12 fits into 9, which it does not. So I'm going to represent that with a 0 and then cross off the division step. So 0 times 12 would be 0. So that was multiplication. I followed the curve of multiplying the number I just put on the top times the number on the outside, and then placing it down here underneath. So that's what we call the multiplication curve. Our next step would be to subtract these numbers. So I'm going to take 9 and subtract 0, and I end up with 9. And I can cross that off. And my next step is to bring down. So I'm going to go ahead and bring down that 0 to 90. Okay, so now my next step is to go back up to division. So I'm going to go back up to division and try to figure out how many times 12 fits into 90. So if you know your 12s off the top of your head, that's great. Then you have no problem doing this. For those of us that might be a little bit rusty on it, you can come over here and do some trial and error multiplication until you get close to 90 without going past 90. So I know that 12 times 10 would be 120. So that's too much. Even 9 might be a little too much. So I'm going to start with 8 and see what number I end up when I multiply 12 times 8. Now, another rule or kind of thing that people follow is they start with 5 and then they see if they need to go up or down from there. So that's just a couple different ways to approach it. I'm going to start with 8. 2 times 8 is 16. Then 1 times 8 is 8 plus 1 is 9. So you can see 8 times is a little bit too much because it's 96. So I'm going to erase that and I'm going to go down just a little bit to a 7. 2 times 7 is 14. 1 times 7 plus 1 is 8. So 84 works out nicely. It's close to 90, but it doesn't go past it. So I'm going to put that 7 up here and cross off the division step. Well, since I did that already, I kind of already did the multiplication. So I'm just going to go ahead and put that 84 down here and cross off the multiplication step. My next step would be to subtract these. So 90 minus 84 would be 6. And then to bring down for the next step, bring down the 1. So we end up with 61 left over. Okay, so now I have to go back up to division. So I'm going to go back up here and try to figure out how many times 12 fits into 61. So I know that 7 is too much because that would be 84. So maybe I go back down a few to maybe a 5. Let's see what 5 is. 2 times 5 is 10. And then 1 times 5 is 5 plus 1 is 6. 60. Well, that's about as close as we could get to 61 without going over. So I'm going to put that 5 up here. I'm going to put the 60 here, and that takes care of division and multiplication. When I subtract those, I get 1 left over. So that's subtraction. And then I just have to bring down the 2. So now I've got 12 right here. I'm going to go back up to repeat my steps, and I'm going to try to figure out how many times 12 fits into 12. Well, this one I do know, and that would be 1 time. So I'm going to put a 1 up here. 1 times 12 is 12 down here. And when I subtract those, I get 0 left over. So that means I am finished because I have no more numbers to bring down. And in this case, I have no remainders. So my final answer here would be 751 times. Okay, here's our next example. It's 4,557 divided by 28. So for this one, and you may have seen in my previous videos that we use another method where there's lines and boxes and things like that and repeated subtraction. So we could also use that if we wanted to. But I think for today, we'll kind of stick to the standard algorithm of divide, multiply, subtract, and bring down. So this first number, this 4,557 will go inside, and then 28 will go on the outside. So for the first division, I'm trying to see if 28 will fit into 4, which it does not. So I'm going to put a 0 up there. 0 times 28 is 0. So I'm going to put a 0 there, cross off multiplication. When I subtract 4 minus 0, I get 4. I'm going to cross off subtraction and then bring down the 5 to make that 45. So that was my first run through these steps. Now I'm going to go over here and see how many times 28 fits into 45. Off the top of my head, I'm feeling like once would be enough. So that's the division step. 1 times 28 is 28. So I'm going to go ahead and cross that off. The next step would be subtraction. So if you're like me and you don't like to regroup in your subtracting inside the division problem, you can go off to the side and do it. But, but if you're comfortable with that and you don't mind it getting a little messy, that's totally fine. So when I take 45 minus 28, I end up with 17. So I'm going to cross that off. Then I need to bring down the 5. So I've been through the steps 2 times now. Now my next step is to figure out how many times 28 fits into 175. So I'm not really sure about that. So again, I could come over here and do 28 times 5, and let's just see what that gives us. 8 times 5 is 40. And then 2 times 5 is 10 plus 4 would give us 14. So that's pretty close to 175. Let's try 6 times. Let's see if we can get a little closer. So 28 times 6 is going to be 48 here. Then 2 times 6 is 12. 12 plus 4 is 16. Yeah, that's pretty close. So we're going to go ahead and put that 6 up here. 6 times 28, we've already done. That's 168. So I can go ahead and cross off division and multiplication. Now, when I subtract these, the 175 minus the 168, and again, if you have to do it to the side, that's okay. That leaves us with 7 left over. Okay, so that was your subtraction. And now we got to bring down this 7 right here and cross that off. Okay, now we need to figure out how many times 28 fits into 77. So we can see that 5 is too much and 6 is too much. Let's try something smaller than 5. We could try 4, we could try 3. Let's try 3 and see what that gives us. 8 times 3 is 24. And then 2 times 3 is 6, plus 2 is 8. So we get 84. That's a little bit too much. So let's take that 3 away and let's make it a 2. 2 times 8 is 16. And then 2 times 2 plus 1 is 56. Okay, so let's put a 2 there. And then we'll subtract 56 down here. Minus 56. Now when we take 77 and we subtract 56, we end up with 21. Now that might seem like kind of a big remainder, but if the remainder is smaller than the number you're dividing by, then that means it's correct. You're on the right pace. So the answer here would be this number we have on the top, 162, with a remainder of 21 would be our final answer here. Okay, here's our next example. We're going to take the number 6,860 and divide it by 28. So 6,860 divided by 28. So again, we'll use the standard algorithm, but I'm not going to write the letters on the side this time because we've kind of been doing this for a while. So I feel like you might have this already in your head and we don't really need to track our steps. However, if you feel like you need to track your steps, please feel free to do so. So 28 does not fit into 6. So I'm going to put a 0 up there. There is also a shortcut. If you end up with a 0 on the top or 0 times. You don't have to do 0 times 28 equals 0 and then subtract it and bring it all down if you don't want to. There is a shortcut, but I'm going to kind of walk through it just for those of us that like to have all 4 steps in order. So 0 times 28 is 0. That would be 6 left over. Bring down the 8. Now we have to figure out how many times we think 28 would fit into 68. So I'm going to come over here and do 28. What I'm thinking is 28 is kind of close to 30. If I count by 30s, 30, 60, that gets me pretty close to 68. So I'm thinking I'm going to start with 2 and just see where that gives us, where that lands us. 8 times 2 is 16. So I'll do that. And then 2 times 2 is 4 plus 1 is 5. So 56 is pretty close. I could go ahead and see what 28 times 3 is just to see if I could get closer. 8 times 3 is 24. Then 2 times 3 is 6 plus 2 is 8. So 84. So that would be too much. We'll stick with the 2. So I'm going to put the 2 up here and the 56 down here. And then I'm going to go ahead and subtract that, which would give me 12 left over. So now I'm going to bring down the 6. And I need to figure out how many times 28 fits into 126. Well, I can see that 2 is probably not enough. 3 is closer, but maybe not enough. Maybe I try 4 because that could get me a little bit closer. So I'm going to erase this and this. And I'm going to see what 4 ends up being. 8 times 4 is 32. 2 times 4 is 8. 8 plus 3 is 11. So that's pretty close, 112. So I'm going to go ahead and use that. I'm going to put the 4 up here and the 112 here. 6 minus 2 is 4. 2 minus 1 is 1. So, okay, so that leaves me with 14. I'm going to bring down the 0. Now I need to see how close I can get to 140. 28 times 4 is pretty close. Let's see what 28 times 5 looks like. 28 times 5. So 8 times 5 is 40. And then 2 times 5 is 10 plus 4. Oh, it's exactly 140. That's perfect. So I'm going to put that 5 up here, that 140 here, and subtract those and end up with 0 left over. So my final answer to this one would be 245. Okay, here's our next one. We're going to take 4,229 and divide it by 26. So I'm going to go ahead and put that first number, 4,229 inside and 26 on the outside. Now, 26 does not fit into 4, so that's going to be a 0. And again, I could do 0 times 26 is 0, subtract that, 4 left over, bring down the 2. Okay, so now if I'm trying to figure out how many times 26 fits into 42, I could round 26 to 30, and that seems like it would be 1 time. So I think I'm going to go with 1 and then put 26 here. And now I can subtract those. So 42 minus 26 is 16. So I'm definitely on the right track because 16 is less than 26. If I had subtracted there and got a number bigger than 26, that means that I could have taken another group of 26 out of that amount. Okay, so I'm going to bring down the 2. Now I got to figure out how many times 26 fits into 162. So again, I'm going to use kind of my rounding. I'm going to round 26 to 30 and count by 30s. So that would be 30, 60, 90, 120, and then 150. So I'm thinking 5 is a good place to start just to see what we get. So 26 times 5, that's 30. And then 10 plus 3, so it's 130. I'm wondering if we could get even closer. Let's try 26 times 6. Times 6. 6 times 6 is 36. Then 2 times 6 is 12 plus 3 is 156. Okay, I think that's even closer. So we're going to go with let's see, let's put a 6 up here. Perfect. And then we'll put 156 here. And then we'll go ahead and subtract that. 162 minus 156 is 6. Perfect. So since 6 is less than 26, we know we're on the right track. Let's go ahead and bring down this 9. And now we need to figure out how many times 26 fits into 69. Well, 26 times 5 is too much because that's 130 we can see right there. So let's take it down a few notches. Let's go down to 3 and see what that equals. So I'm going to put 3 here. 6 times 3 is 18. 2 times 3 is 6 plus 1 is 7. Oh, looks like it's going to be a little too much. So let's see what 2 is. Erase all that. Okay, so 6 times 2 is 12. And then 2 times 2 is 4 plus 1 is 5. Okay, so it looks like that's going to work. I'll put the 2 up here, the 52 here. And then we got 7 and 1. So we have 17 left over. That's okay, because that means that it's less than 26. So that means we're right on the right track. We could not have made another group of 26 out of that. So your final answer here is going to be 162 with a remainder of 17. All right, here is our next problem and our last one for today's video. We're going to take 2,827 and divide it by 14. So let's do this. 2,827 divided by 14. Okay, so 14 does not fit into 2, so that's going to get a 0. Again, 0 here, 2 left over, bring down the 8. So I think, because I kind of know my 14 facts, that 14 times 2 is 28, but I'm going to come over here just to make sure. 14 times 2. So 4 times 2 is 8, and 1 times 2 is 2. Perfect. So that's going to be 2 here and 28 here. If I subtract that, I get 0 left over. Now I have to bring down the 2 and put it there. Okay, so 14 does not fit into 2 at all. So we're going to have to represent that with a 0. 0 times 14 is 0. Subtract that, and we get 2 left over. Bring down the 7. And we know from the previous multiplication that we tried that 14 times 2 is 28, not times 20, or not 27. So that means we can only do it once. We can only make one group of 14 out of those 27. So we're going to make 14 here. And now we have to subtract this and we end up with 13. So yes, we can have a remainder of 13 because it is still less than 14. So 201 with a remainder of 13 would be our answer here. All right, you guys, thank you so much for joining me for today's video. I hope to see you in another video very soon.